My name is Jessica Morgan. I am 25 years old. I found the envelope on a Tuesday afternoon while I was clearing the bottom drawer of the desk in my apartment in Bend. The drawer stuck the way it always did in the dry Oregon air, and when I finally yanked it open, the envelope slid out from under a stack of old utility bills. It was addressed in my mother's handwriting to a bank in Portland. The postmark was from 6 months earlier. I almost put it back without opening it. Then I saw the word cosigner typed on the front in small capital letters. I sat on the floor with my back against the desk leg and opened it. Inside was a copy of a loan application for a piece of commercial property my father had once mentioned in passing. My mother's signature was on every page. Mine was not. There was a second page, a letter from the bank asking for additional documentation from the second applicant. My name was listed there as the required cosigner. Someone had crossed it out in pen and written "not necessary, family internal matter" in the margin. The handwriting was my mother's. I folded the papers and set them on the desk. I did not call anyone right away. I made a cup of coffee and drank it standing at the kitchen counter, watching the light change on the pine trees outside the window. At 25, I had been living on my own for 3 years, paying my own rent from the small marketing job I kept because it let me stay in Bend without asking anyone for help. I had not been to my parents' house in 8 months. My sister Allison had called twice in that time, both times to ask if I was still being difficult about some family thing she never explained. The phone rang while the coffee was still hot. It was my mother. "Jessica," she said. "No, hello. I need you to come by the house this evening. We have paperwork that requires your signature." I looked at the envelope on the desk. "What kind of paperwork?" "It is a family matter," she said. Her voice stayed even, the way it always did when she had already decided the outcome. "Your father and I have been handling the details. Allison is here. We would like to finish this tonight so we can move forward." I waited 3 seconds before answering. I found a loan application with my name on it as cosigner. It was dated 6 months ago. My signature is not on it. There was a short silence on her end. Then she said, "That document is no longer relevant. We adjusted the terms. The new paperwork is different. You will understand when you see it." "I would like to see it now," I said. "You will see it when you come over," she replied. 6 o'clock. Do not be late. Allison has already rearranged her evening for this. She hung up before I could answer. I set the phone down and looked at the envelope again. The papers inside felt thinner than they should have. I opened my laptop and searched the county records for the property address listed on the application. It came up under a limited liability company I had never heard of. The registered agent was my mother's maiden name. No mention of my father or my sister. No mention of me. At 5:40 I drove the 20 minutes to the house on the edge of town. I did not bring anything with me. When I pulled into the driveway, my sister's car was already there. So was another car I did not recognize, a silver sedan with a Portland dealership plate. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing the same navy cardigan she had worn the last time I saw her. She stepped aside without a greeting and closed the door behind me. "Allison is in the dining room," she said. "We have the documents laid out." I walked past her. My sister sat at the head of the table with a stack of papers in front of her. She did not stand up. She looked at me the way she looked at people she was about to negotiate with at her real estate office. "Sit down," my sister said. "Mom wants to get this done before dinner." I stayed standing. "What exactly needs my signature?" My mother came into the room and placed a single sheet of paper on the table in front of the chair across from my sister. It was a power of attorney form. My name was typed as the principal. My mother's name was typed as the agent. The scope was broad enough to cover financial decisions, property transactions, and medical directives. This gives you authority to act on my behalf if something happens, my mother said. It is practical. Your father and I are not getting any younger. Allison already signed a similar form last month. We need yours to keep everything consistent. I read the first paragraph. The language was standard until the last sentence. This document revokes all prior authorizations and supersedes any conflicting instructions previously given by the principal. I looked up. Revokes all prior authorizations, I said. What prior authorizations exist? My mother's mouth tightened for half a second. Nothing that concerns you. Sign it and we can move on. My sister pushed a pen across the table. It is not a big deal, Jessica. You live in that apartment by yourself. You do not even come to family dinners anymore. This is just paperwork so Mom does not have to chase you down later. I did not pick up the pen. I want to read the full document before I sign anything. My mother exhaled through her nose. You have always made simple things difficult. Your sister drove here after work. I have dinner in the oven. Sign the form. The front door opened behind me. I turned. My cousin Rachel Moore walked in carrying a leather folder. She worked at the same bank branch my mother used. She had not called ahead. Linda, Rachel said, nodding at my mother. Then she looked at me. Jessica. I brought the updated account statements you asked for last week. I figured I could drop them off while I was in the area. My mother's expression did not change, but her hand moved to cover the power of attorney form on the table. Rachel set the folder down and opened it. Inside were printouts showing transfers from my parents' joint account into the LLC that held the Portland property. One transfer was marked Temporary Bridge, Jessica cosign pending. The date was 5 months old. Rachel glanced at the form on the table. Is that the new POA? The branch manager wanted me to confirm whether the cosign requirement on the original loan was still active. I told him I would check. My mother picked up the power of attorney form and slid it into a drawer. We are handling it internally. Thank you for the statements, Rachel. Rachel looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Then she closed the folder. Call me if you need anything else, Jessica. I am usually at the downtown branch on Thursdays. She left without waiting for anyone to answer. The door clicked shut behind her. My sister leaned back in her chair. See? Even Rachel thinks this is straightforward. You are the only one making it complicated. I stayed standing. The coffee from earlier had gone cold in my stomach. I looked at my mother. I am not signing anything tonight, I said. I want copies of every document that has my name on it. Including the ones you already filed. My mother's voice stayed level. You are being unreasonable. This is why we prefer to handle these matters without you. You disappear for months and then appear only to create obstacles. My sister nodded once. Mom is right. You have not been part of the day-to-day for years. Let the people who actually show up make the decisions. I turned and walked to the front door. My mother did not follow me. My sister stayed at the table. I opened the door and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The silver sedan was gone. Rachel's car was already turning onto the main road. I drove back to my apartment without turning on the radio. When I got inside, I placed the envelope back in the drawer and closed it. I did not feel the need to call anyone or explain anything. The decision had already formed while I was driving. I would not sign the form. I would not attend whatever meeting came next. I would answer the phone when it rang, but I would not agree to anything that required my name on paper I had not read in full. The phone rang again at 8:15. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. The message was short. Jessica, this attitude is not helping anyone. Your sister and I will proceed without you if necessary. Call me when you have reconsidered. I deleted the message without listening to it a second time. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to the bank branch manager whose name appeared on Rachel's statements. I asked for copies of every document that listed me as a party or cosigner in the last 12 months. I did not mention my mother or my sister by name. I used only my own. I hit send at 9:40. The confirmation screen appeared. I closed the laptop and turned off the lights in the apartment. The envelope stayed in the drawer. I did not take it out again that night. The next morning I checked my email before I left for work. The bank had replied at 7:42. Richard Lowe, the branch manager, wrote that he could release copies of the documents I requested but needed me to come in with identification and sign a release form. He added that several of the files referenced a cosigner requirement that had been marked waived by family authorization in the notes. He asked if I wanted those notes included. I replied that I wanted everything. I did not mention my mother or my sister. At work, the day moved the way most days moved. I answered client emails and updated a campaign spreadsheet. My colleague Mark Ellison stopped by my desk around 10 and asked if I was available for a quick review meeting later. I told him I was. He looked at me for a second longer than usual before he walked away. My mother called at 11:15. I stepped into the empty conference room and answered. "Jessica," she said. "I spoke with Richard at the bank this morning. He mentioned you requested records. That was unnecessary. I want to see what has my name attached to it," I said. "There is nothing that requires your involvement now. The loan was restructured. The power of attorney form is still sitting here and signed. Your sister and I are willing to meet you halfway if you come by after work." "I am not signing the form," I said. She was quiet for 4 seconds. Then she said, "You are making this harder than it needs to be. Your father has not been well. Dr. Susan Hale has been managing his appointments." She asked whether the family had power of attorney paperwork in place in case decisions need to be made quickly. I told her we were finalizing it. I would prefer not to tell her that my own daughter is refusing to cooperate. I noted the name. Dr. Susan Hale. I had not heard it before. "I would like to speak with Dr. Hale directly." "That will not be necessary," my mother said. "She is my father's physician, not yours. Sign the form tonight. Allison will be there at 6 again. Do not make her wait." She ended the call. I went back to my desk. Mark Ellison passed by again and asked if everything was all right. I told him it was. He nodded once and kept walking. At lunch I drove to the bank. Richard Lowe met me in a small office at the back. He was in his 50s, wearing a gray suit that looked like it had been pressed that morning. He placed a folder on the desk between us. "These are the documents you requested," he said. "The original loan application from last year listed you as a potential cosigner. The note in the file says the requirement was waived after a family discussion. Your mother signed an affidavit stating you had authorized the waiver verbally. There is no recording or written confirmation of that conversation in our system." I opened the folder. The affidavit was there, dated 5 months earlier. My mother's signature was at the bottom. A line for my signature was blank. "Did anyone from the bank speak with me directly about this?" I asked. "No," Richard Lowe said. "We accepted the affidavit because the loan amount was under our internal threshold for additional verification at the time. If you believe the authorization was not given, you can file a dispute. That process usually takes 30 to 45 days. I signed the release form he had prepared. He made copies of everything and handed me a second folder. "One more thing," he said. "There is a separate LLC filing that lists the same Portland property. The operating agreement names your mother as manager and your sister as a member. Your name does not appear. However, An early draft of the agreement that was uploaded to our system 6 months ago had a placeholder for a third member. That placeholder was deleted before the final version was recorded. I thanked him and left. On the drive back to work, my phone rang. It was my cousin Rachel Moore. "Jessica," she said. "I heard you went to the branch today. Richard called me after you left. He wanted to know if I had any context for the waiver note. I told him I did not." "You were at the house last night," I said. "I was dropping off statements like I said. Your mother asked me to come by because she thought it would help move things along. I did not know about the power of attorney form until I saw it on the table." "Did you know my name was on the original loan as cosigner?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "I saw a note about it in the system a while ago. I assumed it had been resolved internally. That is what your mother told me when I asked." I pulled into the parking lot at work but did not get out of the car. "What exactly did she tell you?" "That you had agreed to let the family handle the paperwork because you were busy with your own life. She said you preferred to stay out of these things." I ended the call without answering. At 5:30 my mother called again. I was still at my desk. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Jessica," she said. "Allison is already at the house. The form is ready. If you are not here by 6:15, we will assume you have chosen not to participate and we will proceed with the documents as they stand." "What does proceed mean in this case?" I asked. "It means the power of attorney will be filed with the necessary institutions using the existing family signatures. Dr. Hale has already been informed that we are finalizing the paperwork. She is expecting confirmation by tomorrow morning so she can update your father's records. If you are not willing to sign, that is your decision. We will not wait." My sister's voice came through on the same line. She must have been on speaker. "Mom has been dealing with this for months while you ignore every call. You do not get to show up at the last minute and demand changes. Sign it or do not. Either way, we are moving forward." I looked at the folder from the bank sitting on the passenger seat. "I will not be there at 6:15, I said. My mother's voice stayed even. "Then we are done discussing it. Do not call later and claim you were not given the chance to participate. This conversation is your notice." The line went dead. I sat in the car for another 10 minutes. Then I drove to my apartment. I placed the new folder next to the envelope in the desk drawer. I did not open either one again that evening. At 8 o'clock my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Susan Hale's office. I answered. "Jessica Morgan," a woman's voice said. "This is Dr. Susan Hale. I am calling regarding your father, Michael Morgan. Your mother mentioned earlier today that the family was finalizing power of attorney documents. I wanted to confirm whether you had signed the form she described." "I have not signed anything," I said. There was a short pause. "I see. Your mother indicated that you were in agreement with the family proceeding without additional signatures. I wanted to be certain before I updated the chart. If you have any questions about what the form would cover, I can explain it now." "I would like a copy of whatever form my mother sent you," I said. "I cannot release documents without proper authorization," Dr. Susan Hale said. "However, if you obtain the signed power of attorney from your mother's side, I can discuss the scope with you directly. Until then, I will note that the paperwork is still pending from your end." She gave me her direct line and ended the call. I wrote the number down on a notepad. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a second email to Richard Lowe at the bank. I asked whether the LLC operating agreement could be amended to remove any reference to prior member placeholders and whether I could receive written confirmation that no document bearing my signature or verbal authorization existed in their files, beyond the disputed affidavit. I sent the email at 9:10. The phone rang again at 9:45. It was my mother. I did not answer. The voicemail she left was shorter than the previous ones. Jessica, Dr. Hale called me after she spoke with you. She is now asking for additional clarification before she makes any chart updates. This is exactly the kind of complication I was trying to avoid. Your sister and I will handle the filing ourselves tomorrow. If you change your mind. Before then, you know where to find us. I saved the voicemail but did not delete it. I turned off the lights and went to bed. The drawer with the envelope and the new folder stayed closed. The next morning at work, Mark Ellison asked if I wanted to grab coffee after the team meeting. I told him I had an errand to run. He nodded and did not ask again. At 10 o'clock I received an email from Richard Lowe. He attached a letter on bank letterhead stating that after review, no document in their files contained my signature or a verifiable record of my verbal consent for the cosigner waiver. He also confirmed that the LLC operating agreement on file did not list me as a member or authorized party. A second attachment was a copy of the disputed affidavit with a note that it had been flagged for internal review. I printed both pages and placed them in the folder with the other documents. My mother called at 11. I answered on the third ring. Jessica, she said. I received a call from Richard Lowe this morning. He said you requested written confirmation about the loan files. That was not necessary. We already told you the matter was resolved internally. I wanted the confirmation in writing, I said. You are creating a record that does not need to exist, she replied. Your sister and I are filing the power of attorney today. Dr. Hale has been told to expect it by end of business. If you want your name on the form, you still have time to come by the house before 3. After that, we will proceed without it. I will not be signing it, I said. Then we are finished here, my mother said. Do not contact Dr. Hale again. She has enough to manage with your father's care. Your interference is not helpful. She ended the call. I sat at my desk and looked at the printed letter from the bank. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing a short statement. It listed the dates of the disputed affidavit, the phone calls, and the specific language in the power of attorney form that would have given my mother authority to act without further input from me. I saved it but did not send it anywhere yet. At 2:30. My sister texted me. The message was one line. Mom is at the house with the notary. Last chance. I did not reply. At 3:15 my mother called one more time. I let it go to voicemail. The message was the shortest yet. We have filed the documents. Dr. Hale has been notified. If you have any further questions, direct them to your sister. She will be handling family communications going forward. I listened to the message twice. Then I deleted it. I stayed at my desk until 5. When I left the office I drove to the bank instead of home. Richard Lowe was still there. I asked him to add a formal note to my file stating that I had not authorized any prior waiver and that I did not consent to the power of attorney that had been filed that afternoon. He made the note while I waited and printed a copy for me. On the way back to my apartment I stopped at a copy shop and made duplicates of everything in the folder. I placed one set in a separate envelope and addressed it to myself at the apartment. I mailed it on the way home. When I got inside I put the original folder back in the desk drawer next to the first envelope. I did not open either one. I made dinner, ate it standing at the counter, and washed the single plate. The phone stayed silent for the rest of the evening. At 9 o'clock I opened my laptop again and began another email. This one was addressed to Dr. Susan Hale. I wrote that I had not signed any power of attorney and that any document filed without my signature did not reflect my consent. I asked her to note my position in my father's chart and to contact me directly if any medical decisions required family input beyond what my mother had already provided. I read the draft twice, then hit send. The confirmation appeared on the screen. I closed the laptop and turned off the lights. The next morning I received a reply from Dr. Susan Hale. She wrote that she had noted my position in my father's chart and would not accept any power of attorney document that did not include my direct signature. She added that she had informed my mother of the notation. There was no further comment. Richard Lowe from the bank sent a second letter 2 days later. It confirmed that the disputed affidavit had been flagged and that the LLC operating agreement on file contained no reference to me as an authorized party. He stated that any future requests involving my name would require my written consent. I placed both letters in the desk drawer with the rest of the documents. I did not call my mother or my sister. For the next week, the phone stayed mostly quiet. My mother sent one text on Thursday. It read, "Dr. Hale is asking questions she does not need to ask. This is your doing." I did not reply. My sister sent nothing. On the following Monday, my cousin Rachel Moore called during my lunch break. I stepped outside the office building to answer. "Jessica," she said. "Your mother asked me to reach out. She said the doctor's note is creating extra steps for your father's care. She wants to know if you will reconsider the power of attorney." "I already told her I will not sign it," I said. Rachel was quiet for a moment. She also mentioned the bank letters. "She thinks you are building a record against the family." I told her I could not speak to that. "I am not building anything against anyone," I said. "I am confirming what documents exist with my name on them." "She wants this resolved before your father's next appointment," Rachel said. She asked if I could meet you somewhere neutral to go over the form one more time. "I am not meeting anyone about the form," I said. "If my mother or my sister needs something from me in writing, they can send it through the bank or through Dr. Hale's office. I will respond to formal requests only." Rachel exhaled. "I will pass that along." For what it is worth, I did not know the full extent of the loan paperwork until you asked for the records. I thanked her and ended the call. Mark Ellison stopped by my desk later that afternoon. He asked if I wanted to join the team for lunch the next day. I told him I had an appointment. He nodded and moved on without pressing. 3 days later, my mother called at 7 in the evening. I was at the kitchen counter in my apartment. I answered on the second ring. "Jessica," she said. Her voice was the same even tone she had used since the first phone call. "Dr. Hale has now requested a meeting with the entire family before she will update any further records. Your sister and I will be there on Friday at 10. You are expected to attend." "I will not be attending," I said. "Then I will tell Dr. Hale that you have refused to participate in your father's care decisions," my mother replied. "That will go into the chart as well." "You can tell her whatever you choose," I said. "I have already sent her my position in writing. Any meeting she schedules will proceed without me unless she contacts me directly." My sister's voice came through the line. She was on speaker again. "You are doing this on purpose. Mom has spent weeks trying to keep everything simple and you are turning it into a legal mess. Dad does not need this stress." "I did not create the loan documents or the affidavit," I said. "I did not ask for my name to be placed on anything without my knowledge. I am only confirming what exists." My mother cut in before my sister could answer. "You have always kept yourself separate. That is your choice. But when your separation creates problems for the rest of us, you do not get to claim you are staying out of it. We filed the power of attorney as we said we would. If you want it changed, you will have to go through the courts. That is the consequence of refusing to sign when you had the chance." "I understand," I said. There was a short silence. Then my mother said, "Do not call Dr. Hale again. Do not contact the bank again. If you have anything further to say, say it now." "I have nothing further to say," I said. I ended the call. On Friday morning, I went to work as usual. At 10 o'clock, I received a text from my sister. It was one line: "We are at Dr. Hale's office. Mom is telling her you refused to come. This is on you." I did not reply. I finished the campaign report I was working on and sent it to Mark Ellison for review. That afternoon Dr. Susan Hale called my cell phone. I stepped into the conference room to answer. "Jessica," she said. "I met with your mother and your sister this morning. They presented the power of attorney that was filed without your signature. I informed them that I had already noted your written objection in the chart and that I would not accept the document as valid for any decisions requiring your input. Your mother was not pleased. She asked me to remove the note. I declined. Thank you for letting me know," I said. I also told them that any future medical decisions involving your father will require either your direct consent or a court order if the family cannot reach agreement. I suggested they consult an attorney if they wish to challenge your position. Your mother ended the meeting shortly after that. I waited to see if she would say more. She did not. "If you need anything else from me in writing, please let me know," I said. "I have what I need," Dr. Susan Hale replied. "Take care, Jessica." She ended the call. That evening I sat at the kitchen table in my apartment and opened the desk drawer. I took out the folder with all the documents and the 2 envelopes. I sorted them into 2 piles, one for the bank records and disputed affidavit, one for the power of attorney communications and Dr. Hale's notes. I placed each pile into its own large envelope. I addressed one envelope to myself at the apartment and the other to a post office box I had opened earlier that week. I drove to the post office and mailed both. When I returned to the apartment, I changed my phone number through the carrier app. I did not send the new number to anyone. I updated my email signature at work to remove my personal cell number. I told Mark Ellison the next morning that I was using a new work line for all professional matters. He asked no questions. Over the following 2 weeks, my mother called the old number 3 times. Each call went to a disconnected message. My sister sent 2 texts to the old number. I did not see them until I checked the old voicemail out of habit. Both messages said the same thing in different words, that I was making things difficult and that the family would proceed without me. I did not respond to either. "Rachel." Moore called once from a new number. I let it go to the new voicemail. She left a short message saying she understood why I had changed my number and that she would not pass it along. I saved the message but did not call her back. 3 weeks after I mailed the envelopes, I received a letter from a law firm in Portland. It was addressed to me at the apartment. The letter stated that my mother had retained counsel to explore options regarding the disputed power of attorney and the bank affidavit. The firm requested a meeting to discuss a possible resolution. I read the letter once, then placed it in the drawer with the other documents. I did not reply and I did not attend any meeting. My father's name appeared in one more place after that. Dr. Susan Hale sent a short note to my new email address. It said only that my father's care was continuing under her supervision and that all future communications regarding his medical decisions would come through her office or through formal legal channels. There was no request for my signature or my presence. I replied with a single sentence thanking her for the update. I did not ask for any further information. The apartment in Bend stayed quiet after that. I went to work, came home, made dinner, and went to bed at the same time most nights. Mark Ellison invited me to one more team lunch. I went. We talked about campaign metrics and a new client brief. He did not ask about my family. On a Saturday morning 2 months later, I opened the desk drawer and looked at the remaining papers. The original envelope from my mother was still there, along with the bank letters and the copy of the disputed affidavit. I took them out, placed them in a single envelope, and wrote "For records only" on the front. I put the envelope back in the drawer and closed it. I did not open it again. The phone stayed silent except for work calls and the occasional message from Mark Ellison about deadlines. I answered those. I did not answer any number I did not recognize. I continued living in the same apartment, paying the same rent from the same job. I did not drive to my parents' house. I did not call my mother or my sister. When the holidays came, I spent them alone in Bend. I bought a small tree for the corner of the living room and left it up until January. No one asked why I had not come home. My mother never sent another text or left another voicemail on the old number. My sister did not try the new one. Rachel Moore sent one final email in early spring. It said she had been asked by my mother to confirm whether I still lived at the same address. She added that she had not answered the question and would not contact me again unless I reached out first. I did not reply. The documents stayed in the drawer. I did not sign anything else with my mother's or my sister's name attached to it. When the bank or any other institution asked for verification, I responded through the formal channels Richard Lowe had outlined. I kept copies of every reply. At 25, I had drawn the line my mother and my sister had tried to step over. They had filed papers without me, spoken for me to doctors and bankers, and expected me to close the gap they had created. I had not closed it. The distance remained. It was the only outcome I could control. I did not feel anger when I thought about the calls or the filed documents. I felt the same quiet click I had felt the night I found the first envelope. The mechanism had locked into place and stayed there. My mother and my sister could manage their decisions and their records without my name. I could manage my life without their signatures or their expectations. That was the boundary. It did not bring anyone back to the table. It did not produce an apology or a revised form. It produced silence on one side and the same small apartment on the other. I accepted the silence because it was the only condition under which I could keep my name from being used without my consent. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to draw a line with your own mother that left you standing on the other side alone, I would like to know how you carried it.